third episode of Cardboard Consultants, and we've got a lot to talk about, even though it's a lockout. We're going to talk a little bit about what that might mean for the hobby, a lot on last year's draft. I know, T, you did a lot of homework on that side of things, so I'm excited to talk about that. And then most importantly, we're just going to start talking about the prices of all those aspects and then a little bit on free agency, right? What does all this mean? Some free agent moves may not mean that much. Some may mean a lot, and some might be a little bit. So a little bit of everything here in this episode that we're going to get to. Of course, I'm Aram. Guy at the bottom of your screen. I hope that it's going to be the same on YouTube. The guy with the perfect facial hair, not wearing a hat, is T. The guy wearing a Rangers hat with decent facial hair is Kendall. And we're ready to talk some cards.
Let's do it.
So let's
go Rangers.
Yeah, well, we got to start with that, I guess. I mean, are you collecting now? Are you just collecting Correa, excuse me?
No, I'm not. I'm not
Correa.
I'm not Correa.
Are you just collecting Seager and Semien? Just that's it now? Are you just big Seager Semien guy now?
Dude, I sold my whole collection except for that. No. But man, I can't be more stoked. I mean, Ryan asked us the other day, he was like, could you be more excited? Like previously, could you have asked for more than this? And I wanted for him to be wrong, but he's not. I
mean, if you ask for more than that, you'd just be an ass. Like,
right.
What else do you want? That's like, you ever see the show My Super Sweet 16?
Yeah.
It used to be on MTV. I remember there was like one episode where this girl gets a Lambo and it was like the wrong color and she was livid. Like that would be you. So I'm glad you're happy.
Yeah. I mean, I tweeted that like if we got Correa, I mean,
see, now I poisoned you with Correa too. It's because I have Cubs fans in my ear every live, like Correa to the Cubs, and Correa's just echoing in my head like I'm a schizophrenic. It's nuts. I can't get it out. Go ahead.
No, I said I tweeted if we just get Seager and nothing else, Corey Seager, then I would be thrilled. And we went further than that. So I can't complain. I mean, Arlington is going to be fun over the next, 7 to 10 years. So.
Yeah. So let's start with free agency then, right? Because T, I mean, you're like a mild Rangers fan. You're kind of removed at this point, but just from that like component and just expanding beyond that, you have one of the best middle infields in baseball now between those two guys. But you also have, two guys that I think could end up having phenomenal careers, and the Rangers aren't competing yet, I don't think, for a World Series title, obviously, but they've got a lot of progress now in that direction. We can kind of see them putting it together. There's a lot of exciting prospects too. Like, what does it mean to this team if they potentially start competing? Is there a correlation between that where we see like, is it temporary or is it more long-term as a player that's kind of established already starts to play for, a more competitive team? Seager was already playing for the Dodgers. Semien was already playing for the Blue Jays. The Dodgers obviously made it pretty far and won the World Series in 2020. Like, how does that work with card prices now that he's in a new spot? What does this mean?
So I looked at kind of like the immediate impact of a couple of these big free agency moves. I looked at Seager. So I kind of broke it down. I said, all right, I'm going to look at one guy that actually changed teams. And then I'm going to look at one guy who had, a pretty hefty signing, but stayed with his team. So obviously you guys probably know who that is. But I looked at Seager and I looked at Franco. Franco coming into obviously his first big contract. And I didn't see a whole lot of like immediate impact or change in price, especially for Seager. And I kind of might push back and say this could hurt Seager's card prices long term. I mean, you're moving from the Dodgers, like the LA market, which is pretty much an international market, to a smaller market team in the Rangers. You're gonna have less potential buyers. I mean, unless of course he just continues to or be the player he is, or even improve and get better.
Or if I buy all of them.
Yeah, maybe he becomes just a surefire Hall of Fame guy. But it might have a negative impact. I might venture to say. Now that's purely speculation, and it could obviously go the opposite direction. But if you're looking at just some of the external factors, moving from the Dodgers to the Rangers could potentially negatively impact his card prices. In the short term, didn't do very much at all. His Bowman Chrome auto, which comes from his 2012 card, There's a bunch of them out there. Primarily, they're all like Beckett graded 9.5s. Is what I was looking at. It's right around $300. Didn't really move that much before and after the deal. And then going back to what I originally said, Franco, his Bowman Chrome first, just his PSA 10 like first, was right around that $200 to $250 range right when the signing happened. But before that, if you span back out in like the previous 2 or 3 months, he was in that $175 to $200 range. So I'm wondering if that signing kind of cemented the fact that he, has this great potential, even though kind of everybody in the space that's really paying attention already knew that. But maybe that more casual collector could okay, now we know he's going to be, around for a long time. They're heavily invested in him. I'm going to go ahead and put that 200, I don't care that the price has gone up 25 or $50. I'm buying in at this point. So those are the couple names that I looked at in this, like specifically when it comes to kind of the hot stove talks and the signings and stuff like that. So I'm interested to kind of hear what Kendall thinks as I kind of maybe push back and claim that Seager's cards could drop. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I would love to hear your insight on that.
I think you'd be happy with that though, too, right? Because like, it's just more for you. And the thing is too, is but not to butt in, but I think it's a really good point is when you have a player that's usually going from small market to big market, you can definitely see a lot of reason to believe that the price could go up, but it could also work the other way as well. If Seager's the focal point of this team and, they end up making some miracle run, then maybe that ends up helping, but, he stands out more on this team. But I don't think it's hard. It's hard to stand out more than being an all-star in LA for the Dodgers. And I think that's kind of the nutshell point here. But Kendall, for Rangers fans, I think it's a good time to start scooping some up if you really think that Seager is going to help kind of take you guys to the promised land in the next 8 years. He's got a lot of time to do it.
Yeah. So personally, I have a thing where I don't try to invest in Rangers players. And every week I'm like, okay, I'm not necessarily a collector. I'm more looking for as an investor. Except for in the Rangers, I have a large, personal collection of Rangers that I'm not planning to sell. So if I am going to get some Corey Seager cards, I'm probably going to get my Corey Seager first Ranger jersey cards. And that's the ones I'm really going to be looking for. But if I was an investor, I'd be looking for his Bowman Chrome auto, which I do think loses value when he comes to the Rangers. But there's a nuance here that it's like, and I've kind of been searching around this, kind of like been, it's like there's something there that is just needs to be further explained. And I think there's some sort of X factor in reasons why some players just have so much juice in the market and some players just don't. And it's just, I don't think it's stat related. I don't think it's team related, although those play a factor. There are some players that just juice the market, and it doesn't matter who they are or what they're doing. Their cards are selling like crazy. And there's some players like, I know that Yelich had a bad year, but Yelich is a good example. Bryce Harper is a good example. Corey Seager is a good example. They're just not as valuable as some of the players that are worse than them statistically. And so I think Corey is one of these guys also, and Simeon, actually. I think they're both in that category of very good major leaguers that don't have media hype around them. And so that their cards are actually undervalued against some of the other players that are in their same echelon of talent. And so I do think it hurts Seager, but I also think Corey just hasn't marketed himself well, or Major League Baseball, or however I know that we talked about Trout in the group chat, Trout has the worst, how are you going to market a guy that has I only love the Eagles in baseball, and so I think they're the quiet guys, the introverted guys, the guys who just want to play baseball, whatever. They're just not selling for as much, Griffey, for instance. I watched his documentary the other day from MLB TV because, of course, they're going to play it because they have nothing else to run right now. But Griffey, was such a presence. And I think, obviously, yeah, he was great. But he became the kid because he was just an all over the place presence. And I don't know. So there's some X factor out there that's just different, and Corey doesn't necessarily have that X factor.
Well, I think a really important point on Seager too, and this was something that I wrote up when I was just analyzing it from just a pure baseball free agency perspective, is Seager's missed well over 200 games over the last few
Yeah,
years.
that's
You know,
true.
and why don't we invest in pitchers generally speaking? Because one, they pitch
get
every
hurt.
fifth day, and two, they get hurt. And I think that there's a level of just concern across the hobby in Corey Seager. I think if we see him stay healthy for a couple years, things might change a little bit, but he seems like someone that might move from shortstop. He moved from shortstop to second. Now he might stick there because you got Semien at second, but he was kind of that guy
But
that
how
people
long
were
is
saying,
Simeon going to play second?
yeah, they move him to third. Like where are you going to move him at that point? So it's really interesting. And those guys are going to be there for a while. So, I mean, the Rangers, they ponied up. The thing is they're not really going to be able to trade those contracts away if everything goes bad. So I think you can kind of expect them to stay there, and it should be interesting. Another guy, though, that we talk about, you know, if he puts it together, will be, I think, somebody that reinvigorates his market, because we know how valuable he was as a prospect, is Byron Buxton. And I think his free agency deal is interesting. And I haven't seen the numbers. I'm excited to hear what you say about the numbers, Steve, because this is what my takeaway would be on Buxton, is that, of course, if we're talking about injury risk, there might not be a single guy in recent memory that comes with more injury risk as a position player. But there also hasn't been a single guy in recent memory that has as much upside as Byron Buxton does. I mean, the guy had a 4.2 FWAR and only played a third of the season. Think about what that would be on pace for. I mean, that'd be on pace for one of the best modern seasons we've seen. We know how just dynamic he is. He's explosive. He's eye-catching. And that's the kind of guy you want to invest in. And the Twins were in a weird spot. What do we do here? You know, we don't want him to leave because we could end up letting a superstar go, but we also don't want to commit $150 million to a guy that, you know, may hardly see the field. They found that happy medium by committing $100 million, which sounds like a lot, but over 7 years, $15 million a year. By the end of that
That's
deal,
actually very good for him.
it's going to be cheap by the end of the, you know, $15 million in 2026 is going to be a little bit different. And the other side of it is it's heavily incentivized. If he is healthy, he's going to finish in the top 5, most likely in MVP voting. He gets a couple million every time he does that. So he could add another $35 million to this deal. The Twins are betting on Buxton to stay healthy, at least to a degree. T, should we bet on Buxton to stay healthy to a degree?
Man, I mean, it's tough for me to go against an MLB club considering they're the ones ponying up the dollars. They're the ones that have the physicians taking the extra long looks at the players. They're the one that are far more invested in the player than I am, than my $300 Bowman Chrome card that auto card that I have. So I guess given what we've seen from Buxton and how unique of a talent he is, I'm willing to make that bet. I am willing to throw some cash at him and kind of see if he continues to develop along the arc that he's currently developing on. So I think Buxton is a buy right now. But you know, that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear Kendall's thoughts.
Right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I love Byron Buxton. He is a ball player. Like, this guy is all over the field. Like, I love a guy who has speed. I love a guy who has defensive ability. Plus, at the plate, he's outstanding. You know, and not to bring Griffey back again, but Griffey got hurt later in his career because he was flying around the outfield and just kept injuring himself. Josh Hamilton did that. You know, we see these center fielders that just act like the outfield walls are made of marshmallows and stuff, and you see them getting hurt. And a guy that's already injury prone, I love Byron Buxton, but he's got to get out of his own way to some aspect. You know, the guy broke his tooth on a steak.
Yeah.
Like, how can you be so fragile that you're literally going on the DL from eating a steak? I don't even understand that, first off. But secondly, if he can put it together, he's an MVP candidate by far. And his cards are going to skyrocket in that case. You know, we saw that from Shohei this year. people were like, Shohei going to stay healthy? Can he pitch? Like, is he going to play the whole season? What is that going to look like? And all of a sudden, Shohei's value went through the roof. I think we could see that same kind of thing from Buxton. Obviously, Shohei's a little different because he's that two-way player. He's that unicorn that we haven't seen in a long time. But Buxton, honestly, is kind of a unicorn as well. Like, he's so athletic that he's like, he's not even a 5-tool plus player. Like, he's out of this world in some of those categories.
You can get
I could see him with the Twins. They bet on Buxton, but incentives made it to where they protected themselves. But Buxton is also betting on himself here. I'm sure he doesn't want to be the guy who's injured all the time.
So you can get Buxton and Seager at about the same price. Who are you taking?
Oof, that is a great one.
Aram, you go first.
I think with Seager, for me, I think I can find other guys in that price range who are safer with the same amount of upside. I would rather, if I'm going to take a chance, I'd rather go Buxton because, if he explodes, he explodes. It's a question of how risk tolerant you are at this point. After things went pretty well for me with prospects, and at the big league level, I'm a bit more risk tolerant now that things have gone pretty well with the prospects that I put some money into. I would go Buxton just because what does the return on Seager look like? And it's not like Seager is this, Iron Man right now, right? Like, he's not Cal Ripken. He's got his own injury issues. No one to the degree of Buxton, but he's not Iron Man. And fully healthy Seager is a solid, perennial all-star. But fully healthy Buxton's an MVP, like we said. And there's a reason why the Twins gave him an unprecedented amount of millions of dollars in incentives. I mean, we don't see that. $2 million for finishing fifth, like in MVP voting, like that's absurd. We don't even see that ever. We've never seen it. So, I think that kind of speaks volumes to go off of what Kendall said of how unique this guy is. And I'm not saying I'm putting a lot, but I got to have at least a couple of his cards because I know I'll be kicking myself if I don't. And, if he struggles to stay healthy, and it is what it is. But I think you got to scoop up a couple and kind of see what happens, because if he's healthy, I mean, we're talking about probably top 5 player in baseball.
Yeah, I think my answer is really similar to that. I think that although both of them technically could be MVP candidates, I think they both have skill to be in the top, percentage of players in the MLB. I think Buxton probably has the more capability of being an MVP of the league. Corey may have the ability to be, he's going to be the best player on this team. He might be the best player, potentially if he has a great year in his division, which would be really crazy because there's a lot of great players in the West. But Buxton, they're going to give him every opportunity. And so I would still go Buxton, even though as a Rangers fan too, I would still go Buxton. So
yeah, I agree with that one. And T, is there a free agent, like to kind of wrap a bow on the free agent side? We talked about some guys, does it boost their market? Does it not? Who's the one free agent that you think may see his market bump the most based on his signing? Or maybe that guy hasn't signed yet, but maybe so far, anybody that made a move that you really think could end up bumping his market up a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Avisail Garcia to the Marlins. His cards have to be booming.
Yeah.
Marlins committed.
I do have one that I think is going to pop, and it's not just because of who he is to me, but I think if Trevor Story goes to the Yankees, I think his cards will skyrocket. His cards are really obtainable, and they're really, for who he is, for what he did, let's just say he was probably what would you rank him? What did you rank him, 3rd or 4th in the shortstop class this year?
Yeah. And that's off a down year too, where he was banged up. When Trevor Story's healthy, we know he's a 5-tool all-star. So yeah, I think that's a great one because 1, you're buying him off a down year. 2, he's going from, one of the most poorly run organizations in baseball at this point that everybody ignores.
Nobody wants a Rockies card.
Absolutely not. now he goes to presumably whoever picks him up, a competitive team, unless some weird stuff keeps happening with free agency and the Arizona Diamondbacks just say, screw it again. Like there's some weird teams thinking they're competitive. But even if he goes to like Chicago, let's say, the Cubs won't make the playoffs most likely, but the Cubs bump on cards is massive. So if you look at the destinations that Story may end up in, I think this is a great point. I'd argue, St. Louis is a possibility, let's say. LA with the Angels could be a possibility. You mentioned the Yankees and maybe the Cubs. We've heard them tied to Correa. Maybe Houston. Like that might be the worst one. And they'd be competing for a World Series, presumably.
But all those teams are still better than the Rockies.
And they're all big markets besides Houston, really. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing there. T, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really think about it from that standpoint, but that's kind of a tangential factor, something kind of on the outside that could really determine a guy's value, card value, is that move from someplace like the Rockies to the Yankees.
I mean, it's the reverse Corey.
Yeah, exactly.
But on top of that, he might perform.
Yeah, that's true. I was going through the signings though earlier and just kind of looking back over everything, and I didn't. But frankly, nothing stood out to me that screamed like, oh, that's something that I really need to go check out because I think his value might go crazy. And that was just a kind of a general look. But a lot of these things won't really unless it's something like that, like it's a moved market. A lot of these things won't come to fruition until we're 6 months into the season or a couple months into the season. So I'm not really thinking or I have this idea like I'm going to go buy someone right now because of where they just landed and make a gamble or take a risk on that card possibly increasing in value because of that. So that's kind of where I landed when I was looking through all the signings and just kind of thinking through these things from an investment standpoint. Nothing really stood out to me like, oh, okay, that's it. Like that's the one. So that I know that's kind of a general blah answer, but that was just kind of my thoughts.
I think it's fair because a player moving teams doesn't necessarily imply that the price changes.
Have we seen that previously? I mean, can you guys think of something where a guy moved to a different club and all of a sudden his cards just skyrocketed? Because I really can't.
I think it has to correlate with performance as well, right? Like if you have a new home and the guy becomes a fan favorite and performs, now I think it really catapults the market because he's under fresh eyes and it's more, he's more under a microscope and there's going to be more conversation about it. Like Trevor's Story, wherever he goes, like we think no matter what, if Trevor Story went back to the Rockies, I still think he has a big bounce back year. So if you think Story's gonna have a bounce back year and he does it in a new environment, I think you can expect that price to bump maybe more than, if he did it in the same environment. I think that's kind of the side of it, but realistically, just changing teams doesn't necessarily mean anything. I think only in that instance where we're talking about a small market team to a huge market team or vice versa. But for the most part, I think it's a little bit of an overstated thing, but it's fun to talk about and kind of see, because then we can follow up and see, did it happen this time? And where were we different? Because that's really the psychology side of it, because we're not going off of performance. We're going off of just implications of interest based on where they call home. And that's an interesting side of it that I think right now there's just not enough data on our end to really be able to say with conviction that it's one way or another, but it's a good conversation to see if our hypotheses kind of end up on or off par from, what we think might happen. But on the draft side now, because
let me get two more things right here.
Okay.
So T said something that really I think we need to bring a point up here. He was saying it doesn't, I think he was generally saying prices don't generally jump when you move teams, that specific player, but it's a nuance that we need to bring up here. The cards that do jump when a player moves is the who's going to take their spot. And I think that's what we're looking at. When you're looking at who's going to take Correa's spot in Houston, who's going to take Torrey's spot in Colorado. So like some guy like Brendan Rodgers or some guy like, who's the guy? Pena.
Yeah, Jeremy Pena. Houston. I like Pena.
I love Pena. I think Pena is a huge buy for me, especially if they don't end up with one of those top guys, like if they are going to roll out Pena for 2022. But the only other way that I could see somebody moving from free agency to another team is legacy. So like, let's say the Expos were still around and Vladdy moves from Toronto to the Expos, and you have Vladdy Jr. going to where Vladdy Sr. played. I could see that playing a huge deal, but that's obviously an outlier, but we do have a lot of legacy players in today's game. So, there's that. Anyway, back to the draft.
Thoughts. Yeah. I like the thought about who's going to replace. That's definitely something you should look at when a big name moves, who's next in line. Because probably there are guys that you can buy on the cheap right now. So
and that plays right into our strengths here at Just Baseball, and here at the, plugging our show. Here we are, like making some a free plug here. That's what we do. Like, we specialize in looking at that next level and how can prospects capitalize on those prospects.
Well, let's talk about those prospects. And these are guys that aren't probably going to be filling in any roles for the most part anytime soon. You might see Torkelson up next year, but for the most part, the 2020 draft is not really going to impact the major leagues just yet. But there's a lot of guys that I think made waves in the minor leagues this year and saw their value jump a ton. Before I get into the names that I really like, I figure it might be a better starting point, T, to kind of go into maybe what stood out to you the most as you did your research on some of the prices. Were you surprised by anybody's higher prices or lower prices, or what really stood out to you as you kind of looked over the entire 2020 draft class?
Well, I did a lot of research on the 2021, like the most recent draft.
Okay.
So I if we can go a little bit different direction.
Yeah. I did 21 as well. So
Bowman
that's my mistake.
2021 draft first edition boxes. And so for those of you, that are listening to this, there's kind of two configurations. There's like the one that came out on Topps website, which was like 50 packs, I think, in a box. And then there's the hobby edition, which is 24 packs in a box. Each pack has 10 cards in a box. The hobby edition goes for 400. The Topps edition goes for about 700, 750 now, depending on where you can get it online. So that's the newest Bowman product that's out right now. Bowman 2021 draft, which is another product, will come later. But anyway, we're talking about the first edition cards. And so this is our first look at this most recent draft class. In looking at that, I was absolutely shocked at some of the prices that some of these guys are going for. One of the worst things I think about this product is that an auto only comes in 1 out of every 206 packs.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So, I mean, that's just crazy. So you have a 24 pack hobby box. You got to go 5 deep before you even get one auto, which is kind of crazy. And so, but then like I started looking at box breaks, because that's obviously stuff that we're really interested in, and just the prices for some of these guys. I'll just kind of read you off. Okay, first of all, Aram, these are the guys that don't have cards. This is first round guys that don't have cards in the 2021 draft class. Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, Khalil Watson, Matt McLean, Trey Sweeney, Jordan Wicks, Colson Montgomery, and Max Muncy. Those are the guys that don't have a card. So if you are looking through this whole thing, you're trying to target one of those guys, I'm sorry, but they don't have a card in this first edition set. So keep that in mind.
They actually, I know for Jack, for instance, he's not going to be until 2022, Bowman.
Yeah. Even something else to consider. Don't go shopping for him in the 2021 Bowman draft product that comes out, which probably at the end of the month.
Really hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
They always withhold the number 2 pick. It's just always the thing.
So then if you start looking at players in the first round that have an auto, you're talking about Henry Davis, first overall, Frank Mazzucato, Gunnar Hoglund, Carson Williams, Jay Allen, and Joe Mack, who I believe was Jay Allen and Joe Mack were compensatory picks, or maybe the competition balance or whatever it's called.
Yeah, competitive balance picks. Joe Mack, catcher, really far off, but overslot competitive balance pick. It's interesting how they end up picking some of those guys. And real quick before you get into that, just to kind of help prime a little bit, what's the difference between the first edition like base card, let's say, because that's 99.99% what you're pulling here, a first edition base card versus their regular, technically first Bowman draft card that's going to come out? I know that has the little first, but I'm talking price wise. What's the big difference, generally speaking, when you have the first edition versus just their regular first draft card?
Yeah. So the first editions, which again has that little stamp. Oh shoot, you can't see it because I'm blurred. Darn it.
Put it right in front of your face.
Does that work? Oh yeah, a little back.
There you go.
Oh
there
yeah,
right there. That little first edition stamp, whatever. That was a Shane Baz out of 150, but they're a little bit more rare in terms of like the actual chrome first, and so there's not as many of them, I think, produced, and so again, they're just a little bit more rare. So you'll see a little bit higher prices on these, in my opinion. But it's not like super crazy. So, but the prices in terms of what these guys are going for are absolutely outrageous, in my opinion. So, and these aren't chrome cards. These are just like paper firsts. And so the Marcelo Meyer, give me just a shot in the dark of what you think is paper first is going for out of this product.
No
auto, paper first.
You guess, Kendall, because I have not a clue.
I'm gonna guess like $75.
Yeah, $65.
That's crazy. How much of that is just a pump right now because people are
that's what it is. That's what it is.
All a pump. It's all a pump. And so like I think people, like, if I'm gonna give any advice, is like slow down on buying into these breaks because you're gonna get burned. He went for the most. Okay, so Henry Davis was picked 1, then Leiter was 2, Job, and then Meyer. So Leiter's the only one, and then and Kauser was 5, right? So like out of those top 5, Leiter's the only one that didn't have a card. Meyer's going for the highest. In a 10-box break, he went individually for $910.
Stop it.
I don't get that. Like, he doesn't even have an auto. There's no auto. Like, it's just,
you've got to be turning those in the next 2 weeks for that to be profitable.
You have to. You've got to buy and sell immediately.
And even if you're looking to collect, like, this is not the way, right? Because if you're looking to collect, just as much as exciting as it is, because I really want to buy into this class right now too, you just got to wait a little bit because you could get a much more substantial version of that card if you wait, or you could get more of that card if you wait.
You can buy a jumbo and a super jumbo of draft in literally 2 weeks for the same amount of money.
That's crazy, which is guaranteed, what, 8 autos at that point?
Yeah,
like come on. And that's the craziest part. Like, I would love to pop open one of these packs, but it's just objectively not worth it at this point. And I think that's a crazy context to put it into, is just how you can wait and get an entire box instead, which I think is going to be so much fun, because we'll definitely break some boxes on an episode, because I do really like this draft class, and somebody that I'm really high on that I plan to buy up a ton of is Colton Kauser. Colton Kauser may not be the most exciting guy in the world, but he is as high floor as you're going to find. I think one of the best hit tools you're going to see in this draft class. And he still has some upside. Like, he's a big dude. He's going to fill out more. I really see a lot of Brandon Nimmo with more power. He walks a ton. He doesn't swing and miss. Unreal approach, good defender, good athlete. That's somebody that I can say with a high confidence interval is going to hit through the low levels of the minors. So even if I do get cold feet and want to liquidate a little bit later, I know that he's not going to flop in the minors. And I can't say that about that many guys. Like, he is that good of a hitter. So that's somebody I'm excited to follow up on. And when we break some packs, kind of see what he's going for. Henry Davis too is interesting that, he's not going for as much as Mayer. I understand he's a Pirate and Mayer's a Red Sox, and that implies a lot of things, but also Mayer was expected to go 1. Davis was not expected to go 1, but catcher's also a little bit weird as well. But Davis is a dynamic, special kind of talent behind the dish. He's got some things he needs to work on with receiving and blocking, but rocket for an arm, big time power. Like, those are exciting players that, if they're that much cheaper than some of these other guys, I'm taking a look. Even Lawler, we have ranked ahead of Marcelo Mayer as a prospect. That comes because of the defense and athleticism. But that's something that you could realize on the big league level eventually, and he could end up being more exciting on the field. Like, I think sometimes, especially early on, there's a lot of getting caught up in the name, and it seemed like for a while all we were hearing was Mayer number 1, Mayer number 1, Mayer number 1, and I think that's kind of playing into this a little bit too.
All right, so Aram, sorry, Kendall, just one quick thing. Let me give you the top 10 positional players in the draft. So I'll kind of sort them out. I'll tell you what they sold for. This was a 10 box break of the hobby variety. So 24 packs. This is a 10 box break that ended yesterday. So these are very current prices. I'm going to give you name and price, and you tell me out of those names and prices where you think the biggest value is. Okay.
So we talked about this is of the first product, right?
This is the Bowman Draft first edition,
which you shouldn't buy, but
the prices are crazy. So maybe buying a box right now and just flipping everything in the box could net you $100. Who knows? Especially if you hit some color on some of these guys. So, okay, Henry Davis, number 1 pick, $340. You're buying that player individually in a 10 box break, $340.
Are these 10 hobbies or are these 10 blasters? 10
hobbies. So,
okay.
So 2,400 cards. I mean, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
So then Leiter's a pitcher. Jackson's a pitcher. Mayer was $910. Cowser was $270. Okay, so you got 340, 910, 270 with Cowser. Lawler was 535. All right. Then you have Mazzucato, who's a pitcher. Benny Montgomery, 375. Okay. And then I think the next one is Brady House. Yeah. Sam Bachman, then Kumar, right? Is that how it went? I can't remember.
Brady, Ford, and then Painter.
Brady House went for 575. Harry Ford went for 178. And I think those were the top 10 positional players. 1, 2, 3, 4.
What about Frelick? Where did he go?
5, 6, 7.
17 to the Brewers.
Went to
15 to the Brewers.
No, I mean, like, what did he go for?
$211.
And just to humor me, what did Khalil Watson go for?
No, he's not in there.
Doesn't have a card.
Oh, okay. Did Matt McClain?
Not a card. Doesn't have a card.
Okay. So that's the top 17 picks. So
value wise, I mean, I told you about obviously Colton Cowser. I'm shocked at how cheap Harry Ford is. Harry Ford, and I'll tell you why he's this cheap. It's because the track record on high school catchers is abysmal. I would, generally speaking, never put a penny into a high school catcher. Harry Ford is not a high school catcher. Harry Ford is a plus runner with ridiculous power and good bat to ball skills. If the dude can't catch, he can play center field.
Yeah. Does he stay at catcher?
He might. It might be up to them. He's so athletic that I think he can figure it out. JT Realmuto was a guy that played a lot of shortstop and quarterback in high school. They really developed him as a receiver, and he got really good behind the dish, and that was where they maximized his value. If Ford is just okay behind the dish, but is a ranger in center field and tracks things down and is great, like maybe they do that. The point being, though, is if he fails behind the dish, who cares? It might actually be good for his long-term value. Like, he's the type of guy, he has speed to steal 25, 30 bags, and he has power to hit 25, 30 home runs. His exit velos are already way up there. I was so impressed at his bat to ball skills from just the short stint that I was able to see him in professional baseball already. I mean, generally speaking, don't touch high school catchers. This is a really cool exception where you might be able to get in very cheap because of a long stigma on the position. This is not, we've never really seen a high school catcher like this. And I'm willing to capitalize on that. And that's somebody that I can promise you I will be buying spots and breaks on. No doubt about it. And also, to take it a step further, if we're talking like holding 6 years, if I'm holding this forever, the Mariners are in a good spot. They could be a really good team for a very long time. And, if I'm holding this for a long time, because some of these prospect cards, I don't plan on selling for a long, long time. I'm liking Harry Ford from various angles. And I'm excited about that one. And obviously the Mariners do a good job of developing talent. I'm going to bet on those prospects a little bit more than some other organizations.
So Harry Ford at $180 in a 10-box break. His paper.
Colton Cowser was pretty cheap there too, comparatively.
Yeah, Cowser was $270. But Harry's paper first is going for about $12 to $15. So, and if you pull some color of his out of that, honestly, now that I go back to it, I think maybe just buying a single box, and just flipping the whole thing might be your best play, because then you get a little bit of everybody.
Yeah. You could keep the ones you want and sell the others for freaking nutso.
That's what I did in 2020. That's why I had 2020 in my head, is I bought so many of those boxes, and I just kept all the guys I liked. And, some of the guys I was a little bit more skeptical on, I sold it and I put it towards another box because I loved it so much. And, anytime I pulled a Nick Gonzalez, anytime I pulled, some of the guys that I was really high on, I just stowed them away. And, some of the guys I was a little nervous on, you sell them, and there's definitely people out there that feel totally different. And that's the beauty of this hobby. With this draft class, this is another one that is really good. And what I like about this draft class is that it's deep. When you get the auto from the guy in like in the fourth round, and you're like, damn it. There's some really good players that were drafted in the third, fourth round, fifth round and beyond, because of the fact that the draft was cut short last year. I mean, we literally saw so many players go back to college that could have went in the 7th, 8th, 9th round. But, if you weren't drafted in those 5 rounds, you could only make $20,000 maximum as an undrafted free agent. Most guys went back to college. This is a deep, deep, deep draft of college talent, which I think is higher for guys and just more talented guys in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. And that's why, and we'll talk about those diamonds in the rough in the next episode, because I want to continue to do some more, 21 draft discussion as we, as it gets closer to coming out. But that's a box where I think that only furthers the notion of buy the whole box, have fun, rip that. And there's a lot of depth in this box, and a lot of spread out talent that I think is really exciting. And we kind of saw that even though 2020 was cut short, that was a really good draft too, where, I went back and dug back in, and, I've got the Jordan Walkers, I've got the Nick Yorks, I've got these guys that, maybe come right around draft time I wasn't as excited about. And obviously now those are some of my favorite prospects in baseball. So the last couple of years have been good. This one I think is extra deep, and it's a good time to just, if you really have the itch to rip, I would rip this for sure.
Is there any one name in like that 3 through 5th round category that you would throw out there right now? Now, honestly, I don't know if they have an actual card. I'd have to go look at that as well. The checklist is out, but I have to go check. But is there any one name that you could possibly throw out right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. That is a good question.
And I'm going to pull up the checklist, and then we can see if they're actually in there or not.
Yeah, because I mean, even in the first round, like we're looking at how cheap some of these guys are. There's some guys late in the first. I know Muncie's not in this set right now. I really like Muncie, but if we're looking at like later on, if you're looking at upside options, I think you got to go after some of those over slot guys that people may overlook. But the one guy that I love, that I think is super high floor, very similar to Cowser, and I really like his bat to ball skills. I think he's got sneaky power, and I put a lot of money on this guy being a big leaguer. Connor Norby, infielder, East Carolina, went 41st overall to the Orioles. And of course, it's both Orioles picks, but the Orioles have a specific way that they target hitters, and it's very, very clear over the last couple of years. they go for the hit tool.
I like Norby as well.
They go for the hit tool, but not just pure hit tool guys. They go for guys with hit tool with budding batted ball data, meaning like they're on the fringes of unlocking some more power, and they want to help them unlock it. Like those are the guys. They did it with Jordan Westberg. He had a great year this year. Like those are the guys they're targeting. And I love Connor Norby, and I'm a big fan. That's a guy that I will be buying in bunches. I can tell you that now. A huge upside volatile guy, Joshua Baez, big overslot with the Cardinals, insane raw power, but definitely wide range of outcomes. And then one other guy that's higher floor from college, Zach Geloff, I like a lot, from Virginia, infielder. But number one for me, Connor Norby. If you're going outside of the first round, that's a guy I am definitely excited about.
All right. Connor Norby does have a card.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, and that really segues into my question about that I was going to ask Aram is what teams are you going to take in this break? Because for me, I don't see how Orioles are not the most valuable slot right here.
Yeah, that's funny because if you see somebody bidding on Orioles slots, it's probably going to be me. Because I just love the way they attack this draft. Not only because I like those two specific guys, I just like the type of prospects they're going after. But then even in the later rounds, like the third round, they get John Rhodes from Kentucky, another just interesting bat that if I'm pulling that, I'm not jumping out of my chair. But, you got to look at that side of things too, because it's just as likely that you pull him and then you pull a Norby or whatever. So, and it's more likely you're going to pull guys in the later rounds because there's only one Norby and there's a bunch of other rounds. So depending on what the checklist looks like, I mean, you got to look at the depth too. Like, can you get some decent guys in the back end? How's the value there? And I mean, Orioles are probably number one for me. I do think that if you look at what the Red Sox did in this draft too, if they signed Judd Fabian, I'd be buying them up in bunches because Mayer and Fabian, but we're seeing how much they're going for might not be worth it. It's a really good question. I think that's something we can talk about moving forward too, is like, what teams are you targeting and why? Because a lot of teams went pitcher heavy in this draft, and then a lot of other teams went very bat heavy. And obviously those are going to be the guys that the teams you want to target. And the Orioles, first three picks, bats. I think that kind of answers that question a little bit there.
Is there any situation you would pick the Angels?
Yeah, it's to say no one's touching them, right?
Only pitchers.
Only pitchers. Yeah, I'm good on the Angels. I like the pitchers, but I'm good on them.
Can you imagine like someone's buying into the Angels one of those autos? You're like, man, they only have pitchers.
They're like, do they know what they just signed up for? The other team that I like though is Oakland. I do think that Oakland has some interesting guys. I love Muncy. I told you about Zach Geloff. Like there's some interesting guys there. And obviously Oakland's had some good history with their drafting and developing. And that's another one that I'm definitely interested in as well.
What about these Marlins guys? So was it Morissette, Mack, and McCants all have autos in this product? They actually have the most autos of any club. Is that a good team to buy?
Khalil Watson, in terms of value and like where the Marlins got him, that was a guy that was one of my favorite high school bats in the draft. We're talking, I was expecting him to go top 5 pick. So he fell a little bit, obviously, to 16. Marlins take him. That's somebody that, has superstar upside. The Marlins kind of played it safe after Joe Mack. Joe Mack's high school catcher. So that kind of goes into what we were talking about before. Joe Mack's your traditional high school catcher. Probably a little bit nervous on that side of things. Morissette, super high floor, bat to ball guy. McCants, glove first infielder. Like, I'm not too pumped about this Marlins draft class from a collecting standpoint. I think it was a good draft class from a baseball standpoint. But no one's collecting glove first shortstops. Like, no one cares about those guys, unfortunately. I think they're great for Major League Baseball, for your team down the line. That's like kind of,
you don't have any Isaiah Kiner Falefas out there?
Yeah, like who's collecting Kiner Falefa, man? Like that, no one cares.
Andrelson Simmons PSA 10.
Yeah, like no, So I think for the Marlins, you're going after Watson, and that's about it. Morissette maybe has a little bit upside. He's never going to be somebody that's lighting up, the stat sheet. You're really just going after the number 1 pick there, and I think that's going to be enough for a lot of people to still do that. But at that point, I'd rather just buy Khalil Watson, because I wouldn't be too thrilled with any of the other guys I pulled, just from a card standpoint. I think they're good ball players.
Is there any world in which you would pay $1,000 for Marcelo Mayer in a case break like this?
Zero chance. And I like Mayer, but he doesn't have, like, he's not that kind of explosive player that, you are just dreaming on becoming this superstar. Like, there's a lot of pressure on his hit tool. And I think his hit tool is phenomenal. And I think he's a good glove, but he's not this like freak athlete. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He doesn't have plus raw power, though they think he's going to grow into it. We'll see if he grows into it. Lawler, on the other hand, is already a plus runner, already puts up better exit velos, is a little bit more dynamic in the field. That's someone I'm dreaming on a little bit more. Like, if I'm going to pay that much money, I want to be able to dream on him a little bit more. Mayer has a lot of pressure on the hit tool. I believe in the hit tool, but I want a little bit more to go with that. And I think that's kind of the side of it that, makes me a little bit like, I like him as a player, but at that price, I think I can find much better opportunities there. Is there anybody that you guys are looking at in the draft class to wrap up on this episode?
My one guy that I would buy over anyone else is Lawler. I am a big fan. Obviously he comes out of Texas, which is a big thing for me, but I wanted us to pick Leiter or Lawler at number 2. And I thought he had a real chance of doing that. And I liked him better than Mayer in the draft class. And he was there for a while, and then Mayer snuck above him, right at the very end. But I think Lawler has the chance to be the best player out of this draft, and especially in terms of card value, because he'll be a prolific player at a cornerstone position on a team that really needs a superstar. Assuming they don't trade him, like Dansby.
Dansby on him, yeah.
But I'm putting it, in my breaks here with me and T, I'll be pulling the Diamondbacks for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I love Lawler. I just do.
And one note before you talk, T, one note on Lawler, we talk about Dansby, higher floor guy, but I've talked to some scouts that said, man, we liked Dansby. We didn't love him as a number 1 pick. Like, we were surprised to see that, but it kind of, the narrative was building. He was ripping college baseball apart. He was this, very just marketable personality. People liked him. He's at Vanderbilt. He's helping them win it all. Like, the narrative was kind of there. He was never a guy that had superstar upside. Lawler's upside, and this isn't hindsight. Like, this is talking about like reading old write-ups. Even Lawler's upside is way higher than Swanson's.
Absolutely.
So is his floor lower? Absolutely. Because Swanson hit, insanely well in the best conference in college baseball at the highest stage. But Lawler has gifts that, Dansby just doesn't have. Dansby's done a good job of maximizing them. We'll see if Lawler can. But I just wanted to make that distinguishing, point, because I don't think people realize the kind of upside that Lawler has compared to some of the other college guys you might see. T, to wrap up here with you, who are you looking at and who are you going to be buying up in these breaks potentially? And I know we're going to be doing some breaks too down the line.
Yeah. I mean, your comments earlier about, my mind just went completely blank. The guy that we were just talking about.
Lawler, Mayer.
Connor?
No. Connor Norby. Connor
Norby spike. That really piqued my interest. But I'm gonna say someone that's kind of it's a cardinal sin, but I'm gonna go with Jackson Jobe, and I'm gonna talk about it strictly from an investment standpoint.
Pitcher.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I
like
think
it.
that when you look at what Jobe is going for in these breaks and what then he's turn around, like what people are able to turn around and sell him for, I'm tempted to pull the trigger at least once. Like, I know he's a pitcher, but hey, I've already talked about how absolutely insane this market is right now. If people are willing to pay $300 for his orange, which I get as a rare card, but back that out to his blue and yellow, or his yellow and blue, and even his sky blue and base and all that stuff, I think you can find pretty good value at $160 in your buy-in, especially on something like a case break. So you hit, 10 or maybe 10 or so, maybe 15 base cards, maybe hit one color and you're in the black. So that's looking at it not from like, hey, this is my long term, I'm going to hold this guy forever and hope that he turns into an absolute stud. It's like, hey, what am I doing in the next couple months with this product, and how am I going to profit from it? I'm looking at Jackson Jobe.
Well, I'll tell you this about Jobe. And here's the thing. I'm not totally averse to investing in pitchers. And this is something I want to wrap up with, because we'll do some episodes where I'll give you my pitchers. Generally, I'm looking at guys, and like, it's impossible to predict injury, but you can look at guys who, you feel like they have clean mechanics. You like the way that they go about their stuff. And, I look at Grayson Rodriguez, and I don't want to jinx him or anything, but I bought a bunch of his cards before this year because he's 6'5". He doesn't have a ton of miles on his arm. He was more of a late bloomer, and his velo has gone up as the year has gone on. Every time we've seen him, that's somebody that, with that kind of body, with those kind of metrics, I'll put a little bit into that guy. And I think even if he goes down with Tommy John, like, I'll wait that out. I think Grayson Rodriguez is going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball once he gets up. Jackson Jobe is a unicorn as well in terms of his physical ability. He's a spin rate freak. Like, his spin rate's off the charts. His slider's ridiculous. He's a crazy athlete, big body. If you put a gun to my head, and I'm sorry about this, Kendall, and ask me, who will be the best pitcher out of this draft, Jack Leiter's not a bad answer, but I would go Jackson Jobe. And that has nothing to do with me not believing in Jack Leiter. I think Jack Leiter is going to be phenomenal, but that's how much upside I think Jackson Jobe has. And he's really polished too. Some have said, one of the more polished high school arms we've seen. You put all that together,
mileage there.
You put that all together with Jobe, and you expect him to come out of the gate just shoving. You could end up selling there and put it back into a hitter, or you could keep holding. And I'm a big fan of his. There's a reason why they took him at number 3, and the Tigers really like him, and I think a lot of people do. So I want to talk about that next episode a little bit, of like when it makes sense to invest in pitchers, because they're so cheap in a lot of occasions, in a lot of instances, and still, if they deal, the value still goes up. So it's going to be a cool point to talk about moving forward. And even though I teed it up totally wrong, we'll talk a little 2020 draft class next time. For those who may have got excited when I set that up, I'm always thinking 2020, but 2021's coming up, and I know what I'm asking for Christmas from my family. It'll be for those boxes, and we'll be doing some breaks, maybe on a live episode, and kind of go through some of the players. I think that would be a lot of fun. But any final thoughts from you guys ahead of next episode? Also, by the way, comment any questions you have, prospect-wise, player-wise, investment-wise. Maybe you're new to the hobby. Anything you got, we'll always make sure we get back and answer it. We're here every week. But any final thoughts from you guys?
No final thoughts. I just hope this lockout doesn't last too long, because I think that the longer it goes, well, actually, that's a whole nother topic that we didn't really
get to that one. Let's wrap up with your final thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Lockout. What are the implications?
Implications aren't really going to surface, I think, until this thing runs into maybe spring training. I think some people are it's going to impact collectors different ways. Some people are just going to be fed up and be like, okay, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the drama in baseball. I'm just going to get out and whatever. I'm going to sell some stuff. Other guys are going to try to hold on for a little bit longer, and then they're going to realize, okay, whoa, this thing might last longer. Then they're going to panic sell. Other guys are just going to be like sharks in the water, just buying everything that they can. And I hope to fall in that latter category. I mean, I will fall in that latter category. So it's a buyer's market for sure. And I don't want it to last. I don't want it to impact the season, because there's a lot of guys that I want to see play. But I'm definitely going to take advantage of the opportunity if it does. So those are kind of my thoughts on that.
Well, a really important note is that the CBA doesn't pertain to minor league baseball. So even if in the worst case scenario we have the strike, yes, it impacts big league cards. I'm sure it might trickle down to minor league cards just because of what you said. I think people do get very angry. People do get very fed up. We saw it in 94. People were swore baseball off. It took years to get that attendance back, to get those numbers back. I don't think we're going to get there. I think baseball learned their lesson to a degree, and they're going to have to, but they have a lot of time to work with right now. And I think that's why they're kind of kicking the can down the road. But if we have the minor league season, which will happen, at least you have that side of things. And it'll be interesting to see how the market's affected there. But those guys are going to be playing, and as guys are performing, people like us won't be able to help themselves no matter how angry they are. If you see Jordan Walker, hitting 400 on the month with 10 bombs, you're going to be like, crap, I got to go buy some Jordan Walker. Like, it's just going to happen. Like, it is. We're it's the way we are. So, I still expect it to be fine in the minor leagues. Could be interesting on the major league side of things. What are your final thoughts, Kendall?
I'm actually not really that concerned, not because I don't think it's going to affect the season. I do think it might affect the season. I'm not concerned as an investor, because it primarily increases the value, I think, for what we are looking for. Bowman products, increasing in prospecting, national coverage of MILB players, things like that are only going to benefit the cards that we are trying to sell and are trying to flip. And if you guys listen to what we're doing, you're going to benefit from that as well. We really dive deep into a lot of these programs, and we're buying and selling some of the guys you may never even heard of yet. So I think that does nothing but really aid our process. But if, as a baseball fan, if it goes into, April, I'm going to be pretty upset. But at the same time, it would be kind of cool for the MLB to really come around on and improve on some of their minor league coverage. So that could be kind of cool. We're all out there watching, our favorite farm systems. So, but I don't really think it's going to be that big of an issue for our purposes. Now, I do think in terms of fantasy, in terms of articles, in terms of, media that you're going to be able to put out there, there is a big issue with the lockout, but not for card collecting.
Yep. And I'm looking forward to maybe hoping that regardless, we'll see some more coverage on the minor league side. I know private equity is looking to get involved, and that's something that's an interesting story to follow as well. What do they see in investing in 30 to 40 potential minor league franchises? It's been long regarded as not a very profitable venture. What do these people see over here, and what are they going to do with these teams? Very interesting. I would
directly disagree with whoever said it wasn't profitable. If you have a Wander Franco selling for $250,000.
No, I'm saying minor league organizations owning.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with, if they take, because the cards are coming into minor leagues more and more, right? And like, we're having the integration of all sorts of media in terms of like, it's inflating everything from the Cape to the MILB. That's only going to increase the value of said franchises. And so if you have those certain players on those certain franchises, you could invest now and make a lot of money.
Well, they see something, but the problem is you also can't really control where your players are going, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Your best player does well, see ya, he's in AA. And then, next guy's doing well. The better the players do, the more likely they are to leave your team. And that's the big struggle. So while you do make a good point, I think they have an idea of how they want to monetize this. And I'm interested to see what that means and what that means for the hobby. It's going to be a very fluid situation too, but it's good to see people dumping money into minor league baseball as well, as we know it needs it. So we'll be dumping money into minor league baseball cards over the next few weeks. We're going to have a short list of some names as well of guys that I think we're going to be looking at. There's some names we've been picking up, but also when these draft boxes come out, we'll be talking about what we're doing with those, and maybe do a little live break on here as well. As always, great episode number 3 in the books. Looking forward to doing this again next week. Any questions, fire them away. Of course, thank you all so much for taking the time to let us talk some baseball cards with you. And you can reach out to me at Aram on Twitter. You guys have your handles on there, but Wild Card Trading, that's the number one place where we want to send them, right? Facebook group, you can join there, check out their breaks. And you guys are doing what? When's your next break?
It'll be this week for sure.
This week. We'll keep an eye out for that. And maybe I'll be in that too. Every once in a while, I jump in and just start talking prospects and complaining until they pull something for one of my teams that I have in that break. So looking forward to that.